Welcome to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast, where you get straightforward, no-nonsense ideas on leadership and growth, both personally and professionally. It's brought to you by the Chief Coaching Officer of the Peak Performance Group. He's also a brilliant and successful serial entrepreneur. He's a two-time author. He's a certified executive coach. He's a sales genius. He's bald.
Hey now.
And he's your host of the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. Buckle your chin strap. Here's your host, Coach Rick Colster.
Hey, welcome to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. I am Coach Rick, your host. Remember to like and subscribe, folks, so you get every single episode. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, YouTube video. We're on every platform that's out there. If you want to listen to the Bald Truth and you don't get it, it's your own damn fault. Hit like and subscribe to get every episode. Today, we've got a guy, I'll tell you what, we are up in the ante in 2021. I got to tell you, these last couple podcasts have been pretty powerful, some pretty cool folks. But today, I think we just raised the bar a little bit. This is a guy who has some serious leadership experience, both civilian and military worlds. He's a two-time author and a highly decorated veteran that can wear both the coveted Navy SEAL Trident and the 82nd Airborne Tab. Having spent most of his adult life in both the Navy, he then transferred to the Army to go to medical school and serve another 18 years as a command surgeon for the elite Delta Force out of the United States Army. He left active duty, started his own medical practice, serving families and veterans in North Carolina. And I'll say semi-retired because he's not even slowing down, folks. He serves as a leadership consultant to the elite military, Fortune 500, serving our veterans. And thank you so much for doing that. And he really is an expert on leadership and cultural alignment. Today, I'd love to welcome Dr. Bob Adams to the Bald Truth. Welcome to the Bald Truth, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Coach Rick. It's glad to be here.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. You know, like I said, this year I decided I was going to up the game a little bit on the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. And so far, I'm pretty happy because you're one of those guys that I just go, holy smokes, talk about a man who's got experience, both leadership and has the cojones to back it up. You've got the props to back it up too. It's, Navy SEAL, Delta Force. You're playing with the big boys, huh?
I have been honored to play with the big boys, often sometimes on one end of the gun and sometimes on the other, doctor support when I was at Delta Force, not an operator, but they loved the fact that I could walk around in my Army uniform wearing a Navy SEAL patch on it.
I'll bet they did. Well, that doesn't happen very often. I mean,
not very often. There's at least one other doctor by the name of Sean Mulvaney, who I helped train when he was a young resident, who joined the Army for the same reason I did. He didn't like ships very much.
Those boats, you get seasick, right?
So
where
do
you start? Navy, Army, medical, author, leadership. Where would you like to start today? Because you've got some stories, and I want to hear some of your stories.
Well, if you want to do it chronologically, you start at the Naval Academy because I didn't want to go to the military at all. And I mentioned that in my first book about Navy SEAL training. I was a teenager when they announced the existence of the Navy SEALs, and my dad was Naval Academy, and my granddad was superintendent of the Naval Academy. My great-granddad was a West Pointer. My great-great-granddad's commissioning certificates in the Civil War signed by Abraham Lincoln hang on my wall here.
Wow, so you've got a long history of military service in your country.
I'm fifth generation career, fifth generation. And as a matter of fact, my new book that's going to come out soon, I think I'm going to call it My Dear Sarah. It is over 200 letters from my great-great-granddad, who was a corporal in General Grant's headquarters during the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. And his wife kept all his letters. My mom inherited them, and I've transposed them into a book. So, yeah, it goes way back. But, my point being is, I wasn't going to the military at all, had no idea that would be a possibility. Motorcycles and girls were my high school interest, and then all of a sudden, somebody said, you could be a Navy SEAL. I went, wow. So ran into my dad and said, okay, if I'm going to be a SEAL, might as well be an officer. If I'm going to be an officer, I might as well go to the academy. How do I do that? So
Good for
I
you.
continued
Wow.
the tradition thanks to a little article in Reader's Digest in 1967.
See, I'd never even heard of the Navy SEALs until much after my time, where I would have entered the military. I didn't really know they existed because they were kind of under the radar for a long time.
Oh, very much so. Formed in 1962, this article that was published in 67, 5 years later, announced the existence of the super commandos of the wetlands. And I read it and went, oh, got to do that.
And you know what? Everyone that I talked to that's been through any kind of elite force, they said they saw that and they wanted to do that. And that was where their passion and their heart was.
Well, it was interesting because I didn't realize at the time, nobody knew about the SEALs. And I showed up at the Naval Academy to graduate in 73, and nobody there really paid much attention to it as a career opportunity because it wasn't one. The highest a Navy SEAL could make in the 70s was maybe commander, and I think we had one 06 captain that commanded everything. And they went, hey, you're a Naval Academy. You're going to be an admiral. You can't go SEALs. And I just went, okay, whatever you say. And when it came time for service selection, there were only 3 slots available for the 1,500 of us to go SEALs, and I didn't get one. So I spent a year and a half on a destroyer, which has helped me a lot when I went to SEAL training because there's no way I was going back. and I applied from the fleet. I was in San Francisco when some SEAL recruiters came through going, we need SEALs. Anybody want to play with us? And boom, I walked off the ship that day in the middle of the work bay and said, gotta go, see you later, and never looked back.
So what was that like? I mean, there's been movies, Charlie Sheen made a movie, The Navy SEALs, and there's been documentaries, and there's actually one of my friends. He was, I don't know if you saw the show on Discovery called The Selection. It was all about taking civilians through a simulated BUD/S experience. And it's like get kicked off the island, except you got to ring the bell. And one of my buddies, he was one of the instructors. He was a team guy, and he was a big, good-looking kid, right? So he's and now he has a veterans charity that he helps veterans with PTSD right now. And so that's where I started going, wow, this is intense. How do you, what was that experience like going through BUD/S in 1973? Because I'm sure they've kind of, I don't want to say they haven't scaled anything back, but in today's society, today's PC society, I'm sure that there are some things they did back in the 70s that they probably wouldn't do in the 2020s.
So you're absolutely correct. And honestly, the reason I wrote this book, and on the back, that's our class right there, 11 out of 70 of us that started, made it through. And, I didn't decide to write this book until 35 years later, when we would get together for our reunions with Medal of Honor winner Mike Thornton, who put us as our instructor, because we go, why did we make it? What was it about the 11 of us that allowed us to complete this most difficult military training in the world by far? And nobody ever questioned that. And it hasn't changed with the exception of getting more difficult because they've made it 6 months longer to put on your Budweiser. But I went back as a doctor and I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to interview these 11 guys and I'm going to find out what we had in common and determine what was it that allowed us to succeed, because we weren't the biggest, tallest, strongest, fastest. We were bastard children of society in many cases. And, every single one of us had some challenge that life had thrown at us before we decided to go to SEAL training. And that turned out to be the common thread that we had. The SEALs have always wondered, why did the star quarterback never make it through SEAL training? Because he was a perfect athlete, dated the prettiest girls, had the world as his oyster. And when it gets hard, and it gets really, really hard, 6 days, no sleep, soaking wet, freezing cold, shivering uncontrollably, running 200 miles during that week with a boat on your head. When you're the star quarterback, I got options. I'm not going to put up with this. And so that was my discovery. And that's why I wrote the book, because somebody needed to know, what is Hell Week? How does that define the success that is required of Navy SEALs? It's not the this 1 year long training to get your basic done. It's that 1 week that happens 4 or 5 weeks into training that tests your will. And when if you've been tested by life already, your chances of succeeding are way, way higher.
And I think that's it. I think it's mindset, and I've talked about that on the show a couple times before. Mindset is critical for success. And so, what kind of mindset did you have to take, and how did you embrace that during this crazy? I mean, I can't even. I've run triathlons and I've done some extreme type sports, but nothing that could even compare to what you all went through.
So the mindset is not inbred. You're not born with the ability to get through Navy SEAL training. And this is me, the doctor, talking. What you have to have is you have to have it learned prior to going there. And a lot of SEALs, at least 2 in my class of 70 that didn't make it, came back and went through SEAL training a second time. 2 of my classmates had been through 2 or 3 previous tries to get through Hell Week and had quit or failed along the way. But then they went out and they got some life experiences and they got some stresses under the belt, and they came back with a new learned mindset. And mindset, honestly, it is learned. There's maybe some innate abilities to suffer that we have genetically, or to endure cold that we have genetically, but that's not the deciding factor. The deciding factor was, life's kicked the shit out of me before, and I can handle this. And there's a quote in my book that I'm really proud of. I never told anybody when I was writing the book about our successes that the point of Hell Week is to get you to the point of absolute exhaustion, physically and mentally. And then when you get there, instructors jump on you and push you over that line. And once you've crossed the line of impossible, and the name of the book is 6 Days of Impossible. Once you've stepped over that line, impossible is no longer a border that you have to deal with. But what I'm proud of admitting, because I wrote it down kind of out of embarrassment, is that I went through all of Hell Week without making it to that point. I never reached my impossible step over the line point, which is supposed to be, the big character building piece of the pie. Yeah. And I wrote it down and I said, when it was all over, I was exhausted. I did not want to go 1 minute past where I was, but I was able to look up at my instructors and go, really, that's all you got? I could have gone further. Really. And two of my classmates wrote me back and goes, Bob, me too. Because my point, and I love how I analyzed it. It is, if Navy SEAL training had tried to take the 3 of us in our class to the point where life had already taken it, it would have been illegal. And so there's the difference. You can't take me as far as life's already taken me. Because I had guys that were.
There's a, and I was going to ask, is there a tip, hint, trick that you came up with? But I think you just nailed it right there. It was, you knew they couldn't kill you.
Right.
They were going to do everything but.
I was pretty sure it was going to be illegal.
Yeah, that's illegal to kill me, but you probably try everything but. So as long as I can live through this, and sometimes that's what we have to grasp as people in the general world, leaders. We have to go, as long as we're pushed to that limit where it doesn't become illegal, we're going to come through the other side.
Yeah. And I remember one time we were a winter class. I remember being so cold, thinking to myself, well, this is it. This is the day I die. But I'm pretty sure they're going to have to resuscitate me. So okay, let's do it.
I like it. I used to use the phrase, well, they can't take away my birthday.
Yeah. Well said.
And as you have that mindset, when you're in those tough situations, at least I know they can't take away my birthday.
Yeah.
I'll always have that. And so your background is like a who's who of leadership experts. You mentioned Mike Thornton, Medal of Honor recipient, and I've met Mike a few times myself. What's it like to run with these leaders of leaders? And what did you take away from some of these guys, from the way they lead, what they did, what leadership traits they carried that made them great leaders?
Well, the quote on the back of my book right here, which you can't read, is written by Mike Thornton that says, "This is the best SEAL class I ever put through training." We were his first class as Navy, as a SEAL instructor. And when he came to training wearing the Medal of Honor, that is a huge burden for anybody to wear.
Yeah.
And from the day you're awarded it until the day you die, it's a huge burden. And we all knew he was coming. And, and I made the mistake of insulting an instructor the day he arrived. And Mike, there's a whole chapter on how he made me pay for it. And it was not a pleasant day, let me assure you. But what I remember in answer to your question is when we lined up 70 of us on the grinder, there were 8 officers. And we were told to front and center with one of the senior chiefs there by the name of Rogers. And he said, "Gentlemen, you've just entered the only military training where your instructors are all enlisted. And we will tell you what to do and you will expect you to do it. When we do it, we'll say, 'Sir, drop down for 20. But we'd expect you to do it because in the end, whether you graduate or not is dependent on only one thing, whether I and the men that in the teams are willing to follow you into combat or not.'" And I, almost wet my pants. Holy shit. This guy was wearing silver stars, bronze stars, combat ribbons from Vietnam and saying, "Prove to me, ensign, that you can lead me into combat." And I say this, with great pride in remembrance. The day that I graduated training and he saluted me, it still chokes me up to this day. He said, "Welcome to the teams." Holy crap. What a tremendous responsibility he has just handed me, and what an amazing vote of confidence. So, he taught me a lot about leadership just by saying, "Prove it to me, prove it to me. We're going to test you."
And that's a great point, because in today's world, leaders, whether the military or in the civilian world, is, I think people are looking for people to show me I can follow you, be that person I want to follow. Because we, in the business world, we've got a lot of our listeners are, businessmen, business folks. They're in business, and they may have, their boss may have a title, but that title on the door, that rank, like rank on your shoulder boards, is only as good as the people that will follow you.
No, you're right. And that kind of brings me to the other thing that we ought to talk about, and that is, why did I go from being a Navy SEAL to an Army doctor?
Okay.
Because everybody asked me that question. I went,
okay, so let me ask it. Why did you go from a Navy SEAL? And you're a highly decorated Navy SEAL too, by the way. And folks, he's the real deal. He's got some really nice commendations, including a Bronze Star. So, folks, this guy is he talks, you listen. So what made you want to go from the Navy into all places, the Army? Now, because remember, I have 2 brothers that went to the Naval Academy. So there's like an Army Navy kind of, challenge here, because my wife's also an Army veteran. So we, one day a year, you got to know it's a divided house.
Well, the answer to your question is I made a big mistake. And after I completed my 5 years of active Navy SEAL time, it was way past the military drawdown that we experienced in Vietnam. There was no money. The force was drawing down. Nobody cared. The wars were over. And I said, I'll bet I could do something different. And I'm just going to transfer to the reserves, go back to school, get my MBA, go make my fortune in the civilian world, and they'll call me if there's a war. And I hadn't been out of the Navy 6 months before I picked up the phone and called them back and said, "I made a terrible mistake. There's no 30 days vacation out here. There's no free health care, and most of the people I'm trying to work with are nowhere the quality I'm used to being around. Take me back." And they went, "Nah, thanks, Lieutenant, but we're in a drawdown now. Stay in the reserves. We'll call you if there's a war." So because they wouldn't take me back, I went back to school, finished my MBA, went to work in Washington, D.C., doing consulting work and special operations stuff, and hated it instantly. Just, this is horrible. It's all about making money, and money has no ethics or morals associated with it. And one day I came home to my wife and I said, "I've been thinking about what I might be able to do with my life that is as fun as being a Navy SEAL platoon commander. Because to this day, that's the best job I ever had and never will have. And she goes, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, when I was at the Naval Academy, the only A plus I got was in biology. So I was thinking, what do people that study biology do? And some of them become doctors. Maybe I ought to go to med school. I'm 30 now. And she goes, yeah, maybe you should, but your second child's on the way, and and we don't have a lot of money, and it's going to be 7 years of poverty. But if that's what you want to do, go do it, because I'd much prefer you come home and hug your kids than kick them because you're miserable. And it took me 5 years from that point on to go back to school, take on my prerequisites, get into a medical school. And as soon as you're accepted, you can apply for a scholarship. So I applied to the Navy and the Army saying, look, I've been accepted to med school. I'm 35 years old. I want to go, pay for it. And the Navy came back and said, 3-year scholarship. The Army came back and said, 4-year scholarship. And I put on my Navy SEAL uniform. I just made commander with all my bangles and beads, went into the office that offered me the 3-year. And I said, I'm going to be a doctor, and the Congress is going to pay for it. Matched the Army's offer. And they said, you're not smart enough. You didn't qualify. All right. I guess we'll serve together one day, but I'll be in an Army uniform. And that's why I picked the Army, not because it was all about the money. So med school is very, very expensive, particularly when you have 2 kids. So I went to the Army. It turned out to be a brilliant decision because I didn't like ships at all. Didn't want to spend any part of my residency doing that, and the Army had a much bigger and better medical corps. So I ended up at Washington State for my residency, the best Army residency program in the country, and then down to Fort Bragg, where I hooked up with the 82nd Airborne and jumped out of airplanes with them, static line and free fall, and I was in heaven there. It was just too much fun.
Well, isn't there an adrenaline rush as an operator? There's got to be some sort of adrenaline rush, like you said, jumping out of airplanes, being in hostile situations, et cetera. So as you look at that, was that part of the desire to keep that adrenaline going?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I also make mention in the book about when I graduated the Naval Academy and I didn't have a slot. I was off to San Francisco on a destroyer. I volunteered to use my free 30 days of leave to go down to Key West, Florida, and go through underwater swimmer school. And about halfway through that very difficult diving training course that the Navy runs, one of the SEALs that happened to be an instructor down there came up to me and said, "Sir, you are having way too much fun here. Have you ever thought about being a SEAL?" And I went, "What? That's all I've ever wanted to do." And so he kind of pushed me, back into that thought process that it can be done. And it took me a year after that to be able to get accepted. But, I wanted to do what I wanted to do because it was so much fun. And when I got on my destroyer, I was the ship's diver with the enlisted guys, and we'd jump over the side and recover torpedoes. And people look at me going, "What's this young ensign doing in the water? Isn't he going to be a destroyer driver?" No, I'm not. But so it was just looking for that fun. And then after training is over, and I tell all prospective SEALs that go to training, I say, it's going to be a ball. You're going to be able to blow things up, scuba dive, rappel down the sides of mountains, jump out of airplanes, static and free fall, and get paid extra for it.
Great?
Adrenaline is a very real part of that.
That's what I've learned and seen. I mean, we've talked offline about some of the similar contacts we have and connections that we have that are similar, parallel lives kind of thing. But, that's what I keep finding is everyone that has been in the special forces or even in the military, it's that adrenaline and that camaraderie that you have. And I know you said you graduated, 11 out of your BUD/S class?
Right. And we're all still very close friends today.
That was going to be my statement. Yeah,
we had our 45th reunion, and we've lost 3 of our classmates over the years. 8 of us left, but we had the wives, the widows, ourselves all together, still friends. Our instructors, Mike Thornton, Steve Frisk, great Navy SEALs. They've stayed in touch with us over the years. It's a camaraderie that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I think the military does for you. So how does one transition from the military to the private sector? What challenges did you face and experience, and how do you get past them going from a almost 40-year career in the military, 37 years?
Yeah, 36, 18 in the Navy. If you count the Naval Academy, 18 years in the Navy and 18 years in the Army. And I retired as a full bird colonel from the Army Medical Corps. And, the new book, I'm holding my Navy sword in one hand and a scalpel in the other,
Okay.
called Swords and Saints. And it tells
Swords and
that.
Saints.
Swords and Saints, a doctor's journey. And it looks back at those 33 years of medicine as both a civilian and as a military doctor, because I found myself going to war with Delta Force on rapid reaction forces. And then I found myself invited to Iraq for 6 months with the 82nd Airborne Division. And, those were trying times as a doctor, very trying times. But what I think was equally trying was transitioning from a military doctor to a civilian doctor, because there's just no comparison. The training that the military gives its doctors is far superior to what civilians get, because in the military, we are defended by the United States government. So if you commit malpractice or are accused of malpractice in the military, and a lawyer wants to sue you, you get to sue the United States government. So very few frivolous lawsuits ever occur in the military. So I delivered my own babies, did my own C-section, scrubbed in on the orthopedic surgeries, followed my kids from womb to tomb. And then I come out into the civilian world where they go, oh, you can't do that anymore. My malpractice is $10,000 a year as a family doc, but it's $100,000 a year if I deliver one baby, which I did for most of my career. Oh, and I did my own vasectomies. When I was in Iraq, I had a vasectomy clinic for the soldiers there. Come on in, we'll hook you up in between missions. And civilian world goes, well, you want to do it as a civilian, add $6,000 to your malpractice costs. All right, fine. So, but the point I want to make, and it's answering your question a different way. What I discovered in the civilian world is a huge leadership vacuum in the civilian medical. What I started to say was the leadership vacuum in the civilian world is all because they treat doctors as a cost. And so they treat you poorly. They don't support the needs of the provider, which is taking care of the patients. And you're not rewarded for accomplishing the mission. You're only rewarded for making your bosses look good. And that's difficult. In the military, you get promoted, you get awards for thinking outside the box and accomplishing the mission. In the civilian world, it's only about, did you make me look good or better? And, how much less can I pay you to, make me look good? And so they're failing at multiple levels. And it was a very difficult time for me to learn that the civilian world doesn't recognize accomplishing the mission as a rewardable goal.
Okay, I see that. I think we've turned into a, for lack of a better term, a CYA world, and it takes some of the, like you said, some of the guys like yourself, operators, guys that take chances, that risk takers. The world has been built on entrepreneurs, whether you love it or not. Amazon's the biggest thing out there. Jeff Bezos, the richest guy in the world, but he started shipping books from his living room on the floor, for goodness sakes, and until they finally got a table to start shipping and boxing books. To now, the largest online retailer in the world, and worth what, I don't know how many billions of dollars he's worth these days. So the world cuts itself on entrepreneurs and people taking risks. But I think we're now we become risk adverse for a number of reasons, and it's stifling the heart. And that's, for the future, and for those that are listening, if you're an entrepreneur, applaud that. Take those risks. They got to be calculated risks, but at the same time, don't be afraid to take those risks, because that's where big risks, big rewards.
Here, absolutely.
Yeah. So, looking at this, what would you say is the most important points for leaders to focus on or know today, in today's world? Most important points for leaders to focus on and to really know and understand?
Well, I'm a consultant for a company called Victory Strategies, which is a Navy SEAL organization of leaders and managers that answer that question on a regular basis. How do we help a corporate entity or a budding nonprofit learn how to be successful from a leadership and management standpoint? And we try to approach it from, let me teach you the Navy SEAL method of leadership. And it involves challenging your people to be successful, but it also recognizes the need to get to know your people, to be responsible for your people, and to let them know that they're there, and that if you come into work, go say hi to your staff. Let them know you're there. Let them know they're there. If you're leaving before they are, in person, go talk to them and say, hey, I know you're still here. And I appreciate what you're doing. Learn to say thank you. Learn to be present in their lives, because everybody with a boss wants to make the boss happy, because that's how they get their recognition and rewards. And recognition doesn't need to be in the form of money. Money's nice, but just a thank you for what you do is a very valuable tool. Excellent.
Well, Bob, I want to make sure I'm being careful with your time, because I know you've got a lot of things going on, even in that semi-retired mode, as we talked about, you're still busy as a one-armed paper hanger. So what's up? What's next? Any projects on the horizon for you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I've, since I retired, and I put it out there on LinkedIn that I'm retired, 6 different companies have reached out to me and asked me to be their medical advisor. And I've got a company out of England and Wales. I'm going to put retired on my LinkedIn then. What's that?
I'm going to put retired on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. And everybody calls. No, Pharma Sentinel is a company out of England. There's a Medicor and Helios, a company out of Colorado and Louisiana, doing remote patient monitoring, as we talked about before. I've got a pediatric multivitamin company that's owned by another Navy SEAL. It's just, contacts make a huge difference in the world. And I'm on the board of directors of 2 veterans support groups. One is the Veteran Life Center in North Carolina. And anybody that's listening and has a veteran that needs a place to live, we have a home for 100 people here in North Carolina that just opened. And, I was telling you before we started that, the dentist that I hired to work for me at Delta Force went on to be the Surgeon General of the Army Dental Corps. And he just reconnected with me and is getting dental care to our veterans here in North Carolina. And, it's just, I'm getting busier every day.
That's wonderful. I may have to connect him with my wife. She was in the dental corps in the Army.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, she
Rob
was an
Temple
assistant.
is his name. And
that's kind of cool.
To connect, hook me up. I'll make it happen.
Absolutely, for sure. So, all right. So, every time I ask every one of my guests, I said, we've heard all about what you're doing, and not making light of it at all. But, I want to know a little bit about the real Dr. Bob here. So I've got 3 questions. I think we'll open it up just a little bit and get our listeners and our viewers really know who you are, a little bit about who you are inside. So 3 questions, and I call them the bald truth questions, because they're pretty straightforward and no nonsense. So here we go. You're holding a dinner party. You get to invite 5 people, but those 5 people can be anybody in all of history, alive or dead. The only caveat is they have to have been at least born. You can't go, I want to see my great-great-great-grandson, see what he does in the future. Nope. Anyone up to this moment in time, alive or dead, you can invite 5 of those people to a dinner party that you're holding. Who do you invite and why?
Well, I'm writing a book right now about my great-great-grandfather's experiences in the Civil War, and I'm learning about him. I want him to come. He was a corporal in General Grant's headquarters. I would love to learn a little bit more about the man that I've been learning about by reading his letters to his wife over the 4 years in the Grant's headquarters of the Civil War. And then, it's fascinating. I told you before, I come from 5 generations of career military. And probably the most amazing man I've ever met in my life was my own grandfather, who was a 3-star admiral, chief of naval personnel. I want him there. The stories about him, multiple books could be written about, and I'd love to hear more. And I really am becoming quite the fan of both General Grant and Abraham Lincoln. Put them both at the table with me, and of course the 5th person has to be my wife, because I'm not going to have a dinner party without her. Family is incredibly important, and she'll keep me from saying something stupid to General Grant and President Lincoln.
For sure. And you know, and I so appreciate that, because the first person I'd like to have with me when I do this is always my wife. She's got to be by my side at all times. And for a woman to put up with you for the last, how many years now?
38 years.
38 years. Counting. She's got to be a saint.
True.
And she's got to have a heart of gold as well, I'm pretty sure. So you got to be a lucky man. So second question, bald truth question is, after you're done, our time on this earth is gone, they're writing an article about you. What's the title? Not what's in the article as much as what's the title, the catchy title.
You did what? You did what? I mean, honestly, over the years, so many people have challenged, my background and history. He said, you did what? There's no way you did that. You got to be one of those fakes that we keep reading about online. So I think my book will be titled, You Did What?
I love it. Oh, so final bald truth question, Dr. Bob, is every morning you get up, and I know you got to have a habit. What do you do every morning to set yourself up for success?
So first of all, I got to tell you that success is not my goal anymore. I look back on the things that I've done and I'm proud of them, and I love talking about them. And my day later today is going to be with grandkids and trying to enjoy family more. But because I'm advising other people about their success, I've got to stay current. And my routine always begins getting up before my wife and reading the newspaper and reading the Wall Street Journal and having my cup of coffee and just kind of thinking about the day.
Okay, perfect. Sounds like a good way to start your day. Learn what's going on in the world and have a nice hot cup of coffee. I like it. Well, Dr. Bob, I've got to tell you, this has been exciting and fun, and I'd love to have you back again in the future and tell some more of these stories. I got to hear some of these Bud stories that are in your book. You've got 2 books, Saints.
Swords and Saints, A Doctor's Journey. Yep, my new one. And then 6 Days of Impossible, Navy SEAL Hell Week. That's the most popular right now, but they haven't discovered my doctor book, which I just got a call from plugging my book. I just got a call from a Navy pilot and now civilian pilot. He says, I just listened to your audiobook about your doctorate experiences for the 4th time, and I loved it. So,
how great is that?
That's very good.
Are they available? Are they available on
Both
Amazon?
These are available on audiobook, absolutely. In both
audio,
in print audiobook and audio.
Oh, excellent. So folks, if you're looking for some cool reads, Swords and Saints by Dr. Robert Adams and 6 Days
of Impossible, Navy SEAL Hell Week.
Both on audio, so whether it's Audible, whether it's Kindle, whether it's a hard copy book, make sure you get a copy of those. Go to Amazon, check those out. You probably can just Google Dr. Robert Adams, and all his books will pop up there. Take care of Dr. Bob. He's in retirement. He's got to make a couple bucks on these books.
Coach Rick, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I will look forward to telling you some stories in the future.
Sounds great. Hey, folks, this has been a great show. We appreciate Dr. Adams being on. I'm Coach Rick, and that's The Bald Truth.
You've been listening to The Bald Truth with Coach Rick of the Peak Performance Group, the company that helps people and organizations reach their potential. If you're looking for a way to grow your organization, whether it's sales or strategic direction, the Peak Performance Group coaches can help you grow with their proven business acceleration process. Call them at 817-748-7425 or go to mypotentialplus.com and they'll connect you with the right coach for you. And remember to subscribe and like below. The Bald Truth Leadership Podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube video. Hit like and subscribe to get every episode. Thanks for listening to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. And until next time, roll up your sleeves and get to work, and you can make things happen.
I'm Coach Rick, and that's The Bald Truth.